Kara, are you ready to begin?
I'm all set.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming and welcome to another Girls Who Start Zoom Fireside Chat. We're so excited to have all of you guys. The Girls Who Start mission is to inspire middle school, high school, and college girls to become entrepreneurs and leaders. And we do this by showcasing female leaders and talking about their journeys. We have over 40 chapters at middle schools, high schools, and colleges throughout the country and internationally. I'd like to welcome our newest chapters and their presidents. Ryan Shepard from Episcopal High School in Virginia, and Andy Sherman from Aspen High School in Colorado. If you're interested in starting a chapter, or you know someone who may be interested in starting a chapter, please reach out through the Girls Who Start website or Instagram, which I will put in the chat momentarily. Today, we're excited to present another Girls Who Start Zoom Fireside Chat, where we learn about the journeys of amazing female entrepreneurs and leaders. Our speaker is Kara Goldin, founder and CEO of Hintwater. Make sure you stay until the end, and we will have a giveaway of Hintwater gear and Kara's newest book, which I have right here, called Undaunted. I want to introduce Brielle Hanna, the Vice President of Girls Who Start and Co-President of the Whitman chapter. I'm so excited for our speaker today, and I'm going to pass it on to Brielle to introduce Kara Goldin, founder and CEO of Hintwater.
Hi, everyone. So Kara Goldin is the founder and CEO of Hint, best known for its award-winning Hint Water, the leading unsweetened flavored water. She's received numerous accolades, including being named EY Entrepreneur of the Year in 2017 and one of InStyle's 2019 Badass 50. Previously, Kara was VP of Shopping Partnerships at America Online, and she hosts the podcast The Kara Goldin Show. Additionally, her first book, Undaunted, Overcoming Doubts and Doubters, was released in October of 2020 and is now a WSJ and Amazon bestseller. Kara lives in the Bay Area with her family. Thank you, Kara, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Ariel is going to ask Kara some questions, and then we'll open it up to the group for questions. Just a reminder to everyone, this meeting is recorded.
Hi, Kara. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Great. So my first question for you is about your personal journey. So you have such an amazing story. Can you share a little bit of your personal journey and how you went from executive to entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me. And it's so exciting to be here. And I started this company. Actually, I have my little prop here, Hintwater, about almost 16 years ago, which I guess it's time flies when you're having fun, right? I can't believe it's been that long, frankly. And that was my first company that I started. I started actually my career out of college, wanting to be a journalist. And I grew up in Arizona and moved to New York City wanting to work for Fortune magazine. The bad news is, and good news is, that I was never hired by Fortune. I didn't have previous experience, but I got instead a role at Time magazine. And that's where I really started my career in journalism, but on the circulation side of things. So for those of you who are familiar or not familiar with circulation, I mean, circulation is what I always call the backbone of direct to consumer in many ways, because it's talking about first-time customers versus loyal customers. And so little did I know almost 30 years ago that I was, really learning about what would be so important to know about today. And I was recruited out of Time to go to a late term startup. We didn't call it that back then, but it was in the media industry, but in the television industry. And it was a company called CNN. And I was there when Ted Turner was still running around the office. And little did I know that I would not only learn about another type of media, but also about working for a totally different type of person than I had worked for inside of Time, which was very buttoned up and things took a long time to kind of have lots of meetings. There was a lot of meetings before anything could be decided. When I got to CNN, everything was move very fast. It's okay to make mistakes. Go ahead and try and see what happens. So I not only learned about a different way of doing business, but also a lot about a different type of culture. And I met my husband in New York, and he had just graduated from law school. He really wanted to do this thing called technology law. Nobody in New York was doing technology law. We ended up getting engaged, and everybody told us to go west, because west was really, San Francisco was where it was happening for technology, even back then. And when I moved out to the Bay Area, I really wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't know what in the world I would do in technology, but I had heard about this guy and read about this guy and followed this guy, Steve Jobs, for years. And I thought, I'm never going to get a job inside of Apple because I don't have technology experience. I'm not an engineer. But instead, I was reading about this company that had spun out of Apple that was 5 guys who had worked for Steve that they were doing CD-ROM shopping. And so this was sort of the pre movement to online shopping, to direct to consumer in many ways. And I knew that they were dealing with catalogers like J. Crew and LL Bean. And I thought that'd be so cool to work with those companies in some way. Again, had no experience, but I thought, what the heck? I'll just cold call the guy that I saw was quoted in the newspaper. And what's the worst that can happen? He can hang up on me, but who cares, right? I don't know anybody in San Francisco anyway. And he was so enamored by the fact that I had worked for Time and for CNN, big brands that he actually knew about. And he said, oh, sure, you want to come over for lunch? Well, that lunch date ended up being in a very important meeting that I was almost given a job offer like that afternoon, just because he wanted me to come and roll up my sleeves. And he had thought I had a lot of interesting ideas just from a consumer perspective. And I took the role at this company called To Market. And again, I think a lot of the learnings really came from Steve Jobs in terms of he wasn't there, but they had been trained kind of by him, and just about thinking, and ideas can come from anywhere, and just go try things as well. We were acquired about a year later by a company called America Online, and AOL, as many of you know it as, was about 100 people. And shortly after I was there, it became 1,000 people, and then 2,000 people. And so saw this huge hyper growth. Like every day I'd come into the office and, have new people that I was asked to manage, but also it was just going through this crazy growth cycle, which, today I term as hockey stick. And it was a really, really exciting time. I was the youngest vice president at America Online. I was one of the few women at AOL, and every day was just so exciting and lots of fun. I had 3 kids at the time, under 4. I was on the plane every Monday morning. I had friends that were going to mommy and me classes, and I thought, are they available at 8:00 at night? I mean, I never had time to do anything, and finally just decided I'm going to hop off the train. And it was not a popular idea. For many people thought that it was really dumb because it was risky, all of these things. But I really felt like I needed a break. I wanted to be a mom. That didn't take anything away from me. But again, it wasn't kind of a popular opinion amongst my friends and also amongst my family. Like, as I say today, like, family is always the worst when you're doing things that is kind of against the grain, because they love you and they don't want you to take risks, right? Why don't you stay in tech? You're doing great. Everything's perfect. But I wanted to do something for me and spend some more time that I knew that would eventually go away with my kids growing up. And that's when I was doing that for about almost 4 years, took 4 years off and really enjoyed it and started thinking, what do I really want to do? And it was at that time that I really realized that I had gained a bunch of weight over the course of most of my pregnancies and also had developed terrible adult acne and overall was trying to get healthier, trying to, grocery shop at this new store, Whole Foods, that had just opened up, and cook and do all those things. And that's when I really realized that I really cared about my health and that my health was not, hadn't really been on the forefront of what I was doing every day, but now it was. And so I was going to pay a lot of attention and try and solve this problem before I went back and got that next tech job. And that's when I was dieting and looking at all the different foods that I was eating, and nothing was really coming to any great conclusion overall, but I had learned to read labels. And that was something, it sounds simple today, but it was something that, I just had been continuing to go on and, trusting things like diet in the label or low fat, thinking that that was better for me. And one day I was looking at my diet soda, my Diet Coke in particular, and I thought, wow, there's a lot of things in that I just don't even understand. Maybe I should set that to the side for a minute and then, see what happens. And 2.5 weeks later, after giving up my diet soda, that's when I realized that I had just lost over 20 pounds in 2.5 weeks. My skin had totally cleared up and my energy levels were back. And I was as shocked as maybe some of you are from hearing this. And I just couldn't figure it out. Here I'd been trying for so long to kind of figure this out. Then why was this happening just by giving up diet soda? And that's when I think something that I had always been kind of, blessed and cursed with in many ways, just emerged, which was my curiosity. So, and I just kept thinking, what is it about this drink that caused me to hold on to weight for so long and screw up my metabolism? So I still hadn't solved the issue around why I hadn't been drinking water, which was that it was boring. I don't know about for any of you, but I knew that I should be drinking a lot more water for years, but just never did. And the reason was because it was boring. And so I started slicing up fruit and throwing it in the water and thinking, okay, well, this will do it. This will help me to drink the water that I'm supposed to be drinking. And then I basically was looking for this product in a bottle. And I kept thinking I was shopping at the wrong stores. Like I went everywhere on the West Coast, on the East Coast, and I could not find this product. And then I finally thought, well, while I've got some extra time on my hands, maybe before I go and work at that next tech job, I think I should just try and get a product on the shelf, because not because I wanted to be an entrepreneur, not because I wanted to start a beverage company, but because I really believed that I could help a lot of other people. I started looking at the diet industry, looking at the diets in general and how much confusion there was for so many consumers. And I thought, here I had really figured it out. It wasn't a diet that I needed to be on. It was something that I needed to remove that I thought was healthy from my life. And I thought if I could bring that message to so many people and help a lot of people, then, I could change a lot of people's lives. And that was my purpose then. That's my purpose now. And so that was how Hint was born, and got the first bottle on the shelves at Whole Foods in San Francisco back in 2005. Crazy stories that I write in my book, including I was pregnant with my fourth child, Justin, at the time. And it was nuts. And today we're the largest independent non-alcoholic beverage in the country that doesn't have a relationship with Coke, Pepsi, or Dr. Pepper Snapple. And coming from somebody who had never started a company, who was pregnant with their fourth, had 4 kids under the age of 6, and had switched industries. I mean, there were a million reasons why I wasn't supposed to be able to do this. And we did. We've done it, and we continue to grow. So I'll stop there.
Wow, really, that's such an inspiring story. So you've called yourself an accidental entrepreneur. What do you mean by that, and how do you think it impacted your path to taking Hint to where it is today?
I think sometimes when I talk to aspiring entrepreneurs, that, you know, to actually go and be an entrepreneur and say, I'm going to go be an entrepreneur is pretty stressful, right? And it's just, it's daunting in many ways. And I often share with people that it really, I mean, the key to being a great entrepreneur is actually having an idea, having a problem that you're solving for, and also having, you know, this desire, right? So I always say to people that are thinking about being an entrepreneur or existing entrepreneurs that being an entrepreneur is it's not I mean, there's clearly entrepreneurs that are the unicorns out there, the over $1 billion valuation companies, but there's a lot of sweat that takes to actually get there. And being an entrepreneur is not a 9 to 5 job. It can be flexible, but I think it's also at times lonely, because you're trying to, especially if you're starting a new category, as I did. It's not just about starting a company; it's actually about starting, you know, a whole new thought, having vision out there. Where, you know, many people will say, you know, they're crazy, right? I mean, Steve Jobs is a great example. Some of the stuff that he wanted to do was just way out there, and you have to wait for the consumer to catch up and get educated and really get on board to what you are actually talking about, right? And if you have a gatekeeper like a grocery buyer, as we did, who didn't understand why they needed unsweetened flavored water, didn't understand what was wrong with diet soda and diet drinks like I did, I would sit there and tell the story over and over and over again. And I had buyers who would say, so what's it sweetened with? And I would say, are you listening? Like, this is an unsweetened flavored water. And they would still say, okay, well, we don't really need it. We have vitamin water. And vitamin water, by the way, at the time, 16 years ago, had more sugar in it than a can of Coke was considered healthy, was considered perfect, right? Because it had vitamins and water in it. And I was just like, oh my gosh. But being that lone soldier, right? And going there, I mean, you just feel like you're just hitting your head against the wall half the time. But having said that, I kept thinking about the reward is actually, if I can actually convince this buyer to let me get this product on the shelf, then maybe other people will actually see that there's this huge opportunity, right? That they can actually get healthy too.
I really love that term, accidental entrepreneur.
Thank you.
So what was your motivation in writing your book, Undaunted? And what would you say was the hardest part about writing it?
So this started out as a journal. And I was doing a lot of traveling over the last few years, doing a ton of public speaking and also building my company. And I felt like there were times when I frankly didn't know people in a lot of these cities, and I didn't want to sit there and watch CNN all night. And that's when I really started journaling and feeling like I could write out some of these stories that I had along the way. And so that's what I did. I wrote out the stories, and 4 years, almost 5 years now, it ended up to be over 600 pages. So I would say that the hardest part, frankly, was actually editing it down from 600 pages and getting it down to a format. It's, I think, 220 something pages. And so getting it into that format. But I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, but I also call myself an accidental author, because even though I was a journalism major, I never had it on my bucket list to write a book. I mean, for me, writing a book was was almost therapy, sort of talking about all of these different stories. And in many ways, the stories I felt like were stories of, challenges that I had had along the way that I felt like could also help a lot of, entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs to actually, know that it's okay. You can do it. You can go build. And even if, you get kicked out of Starbucks as we did, it doesn't mean that it's the end. It means that it was a challenging time.
So the subtitle of your book, which I have right here again, is Overcoming Doubts and Doubters. And that seems to be a big driving force in the book. What's one of your most proud moments of overcoming a doubt or a doubter?
So there's so many. I mean, I think one of the stories that I share in the book happened actually with an executive from Coca-Cola. And it came at a time, it was about a year into building Hint. And I was really at a point where I was about ready to give up. I didn't know how to get the right distribution across the country. I didn't know how to get a longer shelf life. And these were all kind of requirements that stores like Whole Foods were asking us to have longer shelf life. And it seems easy, but it was actually really, really hard, especially based on the specs that I wanted for my product, which was using real fruit and no preservatives in the product. So a friend introduced me to somebody that she had recently met from Coca-Cola, and he was nice enough to actually do a phone call with me. And so we had a very nice first 15 minutes in the phone call where I, really tried to sell him on the fact that, I'm launched this product in San Francisco, and we have it in about 10 stores, and people are reordering, and it's doing really, really well. And it helps people to drink water, people like me that didn't want the diet sweeteners anymore. And after about 15 minutes, he jumped in and interrupted me and said, "Sweetie, Americans love sweet. This product isn't going anywhere." And I just was like, wait, did he just call me sweetie? I mean, that's just crazy. Thank goodness it was across the phone. I mean, as my parents said to me after I shared the story with them, they said, "Good thing you weren't sitting in the office. That probably wouldn't have ended well." And it was a phone call, but he went on at that moment and continued to talk to me really about Coca-Cola's strategy and about how they believed that consumers might say that they want health, but what they really want is 0 calories. And I remember saying to him, "Well, what if it doesn't work?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, for me, I was drinking diet soda for so long, and then I realized that it wasn't working. I mean, for me, diet was kind of a trade-off to regular soda because somebody had told me that it was healthier and better for me." And he said, "Well, consumers don't think like that. And this is what consumers think." And I remember getting off the phone with him and thinking, I have a choice. I either give up, which I think he thought I was going to, or I put my foot on the gas and really start building out what, I had envisioned. And I'm really in some bizarre way, I've been asked about this story for many years. We're very thankful for this meeting, because what I realized after thinking back on that hour, he never said the word health as he was describing the customer. And I kept thinking about the customer as somebody who really wanted health. And that's why they were picking up and purchasing a bottle that said diet on it. And I thought, there's this market, there's this category that I'm creating that this large multi-billion-dollar company is not focused on. And he's not focused on really the core element for my reason for even starting this was health. And so why should I listen to somebody who isn't even speaking the same language, isn't focused on the same thing that I'm really focused on? He's just got an opinion, and that's it. And so that's what I did. And I just took his words. I listened, I heard them, and then I decided to focus on what I was doing and move forward. And so I think that, it's a story that not only entrepreneurs can relate to, but also I think whenever we're thinking about, the giants, right? The people with lots of experience, the people who are, older, have, the right college degree, whatever it is, it's like they're just somebody's opinion, right? They've got their own opinions, but are they actually focusing on the same things that you are? Have they had your same journey? Have they had your same experiences? And I think that, that's really what I think about a lot in that story, that, you're always going to have doubters out there. You're always going to have people who are going to think that you're not going to be able to do, that your idea is stupid, or maybe they won't take the time to actually say, oh, you're a visionary, you're way ahead of things. They'll just poo-poo the idea because they don't really understand what you're talking about, or they haven't had the same experiences. And, to that I say, I mean, many of those people have come back to me over the years and said, I remember when you came in here and you really had your arms around this thing and wanted to focus on it so much. And I couldn't really understand what it was, but I get it now. And I think that those doubters will always be there, but you have to figure out where to kind of place them in your life.
Your determination is truly amazing. And I really love that mindset of, kind of looking forward and keeping your eye on what you really want to pursue.
Thank you.
So my next question, people often think of entrepreneurs as fearless risk takers, but in Undaunted, you talk a lot about your own doubts and your fears. Is this part of the territory? And what advice would you give to someone who's considering making a big change, but also fearful of taking the leap?
Well, I think that the first thing is that, first of all, there's kind of two schools of thought. There's one where you've had great experience and now you have the ability to go take a risk, right? Or maybe you're just coming out of school and you're starting your first job. Why not take a risk now too, right? I mean, at any point along the way, I also just think that framing that word to like risk, that word is so scary to people. And instead know that if you look at it as challenges, if you look at places where you can go learn something, maybe you're going to not be the smartest person in the room. Maybe you're going to have to pay close attention, but what are you going to learn from that experience that is going to help you to do ultimately what you're meant to be doing? And again, going back to my career where, I didn't start out my career thinking, okay, I thought I started in one place. Like I thought I was going to go into journalism, and that didn't exactly go in the direction that I wanted it to go in. And then I ended up going into tech. And again, I sort of got into tech, not really knowing I was like going into tech or why I was in tech. And then all of a sudden I end up, becoming this queen of tech, right? That was my purpose. That was what I was supposed to be doing. And I kept looking at it thinking, why does everybody think just because I'm really good at tech that I should stay in tech? Instead, I viewed it as I've been great at tech, but can I go and do something else and start back at the bottom again? And people said, but why would you want to do that? You were a vice president. You were, did you not like tech? Did they treat you badly? No, not really. I mean, it was fine, but I want to go back down to the bottom again and go and relearn something. And so I guess like, that's how I think about things, that it really is, everything is a little bit risky. Everybody has fears along the way. People have said to me, how did you overcome your fears and going into an entirely new industry? I just figured that if I failed, then I could always go back to tech, right? That wasn't going away, what I had done. And as I often say, when I think back on those scary times, or think about scary times, and they do come up, what's the worst that can happen, right? And you sit there and you think about it. Generally, it's better than the position that you're in now, right? If you don't have a job and you're trying to figure out, like, it's so scary to go on an interview. It's so scary to go on LinkedIn and reach out to some CEO of some like great company that you'd love to go work for. What do you have to lose? Right? That they're not going to respond, or they're going to say, get lost. Who cares? Right. And I think that, like, if you have that attitude, then I think that people will call it risky. People will say, it's fearless, but I don't know. Like, I've always viewed it as, it's better than what I'm doing right now. Right. And why not move forward and just have fun? And if nothing else, you'll be a great dinner guest where you can sit there. And I always have stories, and people know my stories now, and they'll be like, tell me that one again. Like, tell me about the Coke executive calling you a sweetie. That's hysterical. And it wasn't funny on that day, but those stories become really, really funny.
Kara, you are a superwoman. You're an entrepreneur, you're a mom, you're an author, and you've achieved so much, and you make it look easy. So what advice would you give to us about trying to do it all, balancing work and friends and family and self-care?
So I always hate that term of balance, because depending on the day, I'm not balanced, right? And so I think that this farce about trying to actually, be balanced, and frankly, I think women are, we're always supposed to be balanced, and some days are harder than others. I remember when my kids were really young. There were days when one had strep throat and the other, broken arm. And it's just, right? Like, that's a bad day. You got to say, okay, I can't go to work anymore. Like, we're done with this day, and own it. And I think that, more than anything, I think figuring out what you enjoy doing, and I think also love doing, and are intellectually stimulated by doing it. Don't listen to just because your friends are all telling you that you're great at numbers, you should be an accountant, right? It's just, they understand that maybe that's not really what you want to do, and maybe there's something that you can use numbers. Maybe you can go be a CFO of a beverage company, right? Where you're able to use that because you're passionate about health or whatever it is, and try and just be creative and think about ways that, I always view entrepreneurship as the people that do great in not only founding a company, but also being a part of entrepreneurship is really the ones that enjoy puzzles, right? And are okay with just keep adding on to the puzzle, because the best companies don't stop, right? They innovate. They constantly are innovating, and they're constantly creating. So you're adding on. It's like, I don't knit, but I guess it'd be like knitting a sweater that never really ends, right? And it just keeps going and keeps going. And you have to really appreciate that. And because I think that is really, that's also life, right? And it doesn't stop. And you've got to continue to do things that you really enjoy doing.
Thank you for that advice.
Yeah.
In closing, I love the word undaunted. It carries with it such a self-power. So I'm wondering, what does it mean to you to be undaunted, and why is that your overarching message? What do you hope that we all take away from this book and from you today?
Yeah, I think so often, and I think it's particularly true as we, get out of sort of the last place where we were educated, whether that's high school, whether that's college or graduate school or whatever. We then go on to this role of, starting out, and then we become a manager, and then we become a director and a VP, and maybe we become a CEO. And as we climb, we stop learning, right? And it's sad because everybody, we are humans, and it's our right to continue learning. And I think, and also changing our mind too about things, and really trying to understand why we thought something was one way and how we are learning that it's not, right? And that is really, that to me is living undaunted. That is really trying things out, is owning if we're wrong along the way, trying to figure out, not stopping based on kind of society telling us that, we've got to have one career, and or that we can't work when we have children, or that we can't take a break at certain points along our life to kind of do something that we really want to do, and then come back to working, and maybe in a different industry. And so I think that for me is really living undaunted, and going out and trying things, and not being afraid to try things just because you're getting older, or just because you're considered good at something. Instead, it should be, okay, I'm pretty good at that, but I really want to go try that because I'm afraid of it, because I've never been very good at it. And that is what I want people to really take out of the book.
Thank you so much, Kara. I'm now going to open it up for a Q&A. So you can just type your name in the chat and I can call on you. That way you're actually able to interact with Kara. And if you don't feel comfortable speaking, just type your question in the chat and I can read it out loud. And we may not get to everyone's questions, but we can try our best. So our first question is from Vera. She asked, can you speak more about the creation and development of the product and how you brought it to the market with no experience owning a company or selling products?
Yeah, well, not very well. So I was, playing around in my kitchen, and like I said, I had sliced up fruit and threw it in water, and really wanted this product in sort of a, single bottle and or can at the time, because I thought it was just much more convenient to be able to have a drink like that. And also, I felt like I would do this in my kitchen in a big kind of pitcher, and it would only last for maybe 2 days, and then it would look sort of nasty in the refrigerator. And so I just I took my idea and the product. I didn't even know, for example, with Whole Foods, that there was a national buying office in Austin. I just asked the guy who was stocking the shelves at Whole Foods. He looked pretty official, and I said, "How do I get a product on the shelf?" And because I just thought, where else am I going to get this information from? And I had started, Googling around a little bit to try and figure out, how do I create a product, and wasn't really coming up with a whole lot of answers. And I share that story a lot with entrepreneurs, because it's amazing what you can get from people who are sort of in an industry, and especially the people that are not really realizing that they're actually really helping you think about things. And I've always said that I don't necessarily think that most people, when they're really curious about something, they don't necessarily want you to answer the question. They generally want to be pointed in the right direction, right? And they want to really like have you lead them in the direction where they can go figure something out on their own. And that was truly me. But I kept thinking too, that if I could just get those contacts with, the big experienced people from Coca-Cola or Pepsi, I could figure out a lot more stuff. And the reality is that because I didn't have experience in the right industry, a lot of those people wouldn't talk to me. And so, that was kind of the experience of trying to figure out too, of how do I develop this product. So I started slicing up fruit and in my kitchen, and I thought, how do I get the pulp out of the fruit And I put it on the stove and got like a lot of the skins from the fruits and the oils. I mean, I was just playing around with a lot of things. I almost lit the house on fire multiple times. I would not recommend it. Just trying to, I don't know. I just kept thinking about what other ways could I do this? And I kept looking at different industries as well. And it was tough because, again, we use real fruit in our product, which most flavorings do not. So a lot of them aren't even vegan. I mean, it's kind of a crazy industry, which, will take a lot longer to explain. Probably I really can't explain a lot of it because I don't know why. A lot of them don't use real fruit, but so that was the thing. And again, it sort of goes into this concept, not just of developing a new category, but developing a new way of doing things, is that oftentimes when you're developing a whole new way of doing things, that the people with the industry experience are not going to give you all the answers, any answers, because they don't know, right? And that's the thing that, anyway, final thought that I will give on that topic is that's the thing that I also think that is, something that gets in the way of people from developing ideas. You think that, the big guys are going to crush you, right? Especially when you get it on the shelf in any category. And the reality is that large companies, and I think this helped me to actually work in large companies prior to starting my own company. And also my dad, full disclosure, had worked inside of a large company called ConAgra, which was a big food company. And he had developed a brand called Healthy Choice. But he didn't even know how to do a lot of the things that I needed to do to start a brand, because large companies, they do things differently than small companies. And so many aspects to that I was really confident that, the large companies were not the people that were ultimately going to be the ones that I needed to worry about, because they just don't really know how to innovate well. So anyway.
Jasmine, you can ask your question.
Wondering, is there any way that you could please talk about how COVID has affected your business, and also to kind of like go along with that, is there anything that you do because of the pandemic that you plan on continuing in the future once everything's completely back to normal?
It's a great question. So, and it's probably my book too, because I turned in my manuscript actually right before COVID, and in the end of January. And again, will always be the founder of Hint, but I'm still the CEO of Hint. And so I have 200 people in the company that I'm responsible for. And we were, shutting offices down. We have an office in New York and an office in San Francisco. And, it was at a time, the end of March, when we were all being told in the US to shelter in place and everybody's staying home. I instead was telling my team, here's your mask and your gloves and your hand sanitizers, because you're working for a company that is an essential product. And so it's our responsibility. We are regulated by the FDA. So it's our responsibility to make sure that the store shelves, the grocery store shelves, because we're categorized as an essential product, are being kept full. So everybody had to go out and work. And I was not the most popular person on the planet, right? I had never managed during a pandemic. People have always asked me, was it harder being a woman actually sending that message? Maybe, but it kind of didn't matter, right? I had to do what I had to do. And we've been the largest beverage in Silicon Valley to Google and Facebook and many other tech firms across the country as well, but particularly in Silicon Valley. So when all offices were shutting down, 15% of our overall business went away pretty much overnight. It wasn't 50, but 15% was still significant. And, but we had 7 years ago started a direct to consumer business. And that business, I talk about it a lot more in my book, where, you know, the data had always been a part of my life, working in tech at AOL. And it wasn't until about 7 years ago when we started selling on Amazon that I really started to think about the fact that Amazon had all of my data and my relationships with the customers. And so that's when I decided to launch drinkhint.com. And today that business is over 50% of our overall business. During the pandemic, it tripled in sales. It was, I'll never forget 7 years ago when I decided to launch drinkhint.com. The then CEO of Pepsi and Coca-Cola ridiculed me in the press, saying that here's an arrogant tech executive who is trying to get the beverage industry to change. And I thought, is that what I'm doing? Like, why would you even like throw darts at me? I don't know. I just want to start selling to the consumers. But again, they didn't see it that way. And, you know, today, both of those companies are trying to figure out how do they sell direct to consumers. Yeah, pretty crazy. And our overall business during the pandemic grew over 50%, which is pretty crazy and very fortunate, because we really were looking at how do we service the customer. We still continued to go into stores. In fact, sort of another piece of our business, sorry for such a long answer to this, but another piece of our business was the operations side of the business. And so the operations side of the business is actually handled by my husband. Which is a whole other side of the story. He was an intellectual property attorney, wasn't in this business. When he saw what I was doing and kind of my purpose and my mission, plus the fact that I had 4 young babies, all like a little older than diapers when I was starting, he wanted to help. And so he started helping me deliver cases, you know, when he could, when he wasn't working. And then finally, when he really saw that I needed some help, then he said, maybe I'll be the chief operating officer of Hint. It was a joke when he initially said that he was going to help me out and get these business cards. And today, 16 years later, he really is the chief operating officer. He's been general counsel. He had no idea what he was doing in beverage industry either. He was probably one of the top Silicon Valley attorneys and wanted to, you know, jump in because he really felt like what I was doing was really helping people, you know, enjoy water and also get healthier. But anyway, over the course of really the last 8 years, he started thinking about the fact that we had a product that didn't have preservatives in it. And so when you're filling the bottles on the line, in a bottling plant, you've typically got people that are on the bottling, the assembly line. And so he kept asking the question, well, what happens with no preservatives in the product? What happens if somebody sneezes? And people in the beverage industry said, oh, nothing. It's like 16 ounces of water. You have your extracts that are going in. It's just a couple of drops. And we kept having these conversations about, well, but I mean, you could grow some pretty nasty mold still because you've got real fruit. And, you know, it's basic science. And again, everybody in the industry was like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Well, he worried about it. And about 4 years ago, his goal was to get the people out of the room. And he kept saying, when we were filling the product, I want to get it down to as little as possible. So how did he do that? He started to automate. So 4 years ago, we were down to about 6 people in the room. 3 years ago, it got it down to 3 people in the room and then 2 people. And I mean, it was the running joke. Like his name's Theo. I said, Theo, I mean, you've got one person in the room when the product is being filled. I mean, like, what are the chances of him sneezing? I mean, let's just like give up on this. And he said, no, until we get it down to 0. So by the end of 2019, he had no people in the room prior to walking into 2020, where we witnessed a pandemic. So having been regulated by the FDA, many of you might have seen some of the press around the FDA was trying to figure out where was COVID coming from. And they were going around to plants like the chicken plants. And we heard about all those on the news. Well, they were going into Hint and any of the, bottling plants that were regulated by the FDA. When they walked into our factories, they literally turned around and walked out the door because they saw what we had done to actually solve a problem and automate in a way that other bottling plants had not done. And people have asked me about that story along the way. And I mean, I really give it to Theo for really staying focused on it and really doing it to solve a problem, being a little paranoid along the way. But again, if we would have listened to the beverage industry, if I would have grown up in the beverage industry, if I wouldn't have come from a different industry to try and have been curious and try to make things better, and same with him, like, I don't think we would have innovated in the way that we did. And now we have 8 plants across the country, and we're in the process of doing that in all of our plants and automating as much as possible. And so that is, probably a long answer to the question that came up, one where, I think it's just none of the stuff, as I say to people, is brain surgery, right? It's just about being focused and about doing what's right, and not being afraid to do something because it's hard, right? Or people think it's not important. You might think it's important, and oftentimes those things just have been blocked because people think they're too hard or no one else is doing it in the industry. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, and especially as it relates to health. So that that came about. Oh, and one last thing, what happened actually at the beginning of May, we got an email from Costco, and Costco reached out to me and said, we had been in some Costco's across the country. Costco typically buys by region, so we haven't been all across the country in Costco. And Costco reached out, and the first question they asked, actually 2 questions. One, they said, do you do everything in the US? Because they were having a lot of problems with different companies who use cans, because all cans come from Asia. They all come from China. And so there were a lot of ships that were not able to come in to the US during COVID, and factories had been shut down on a different schedule as well. And so Costco said, well, we not only really are interested in flipping the switch for you in all of our warehouses because you do everything in the US, but we also understand that you're doing something kind of innovative with automation. And I mean, again, we hadn't even been talking about it. We just did it because we thought it was healthier, it made sense. But these people, they hear about it, right? When you're doing things that are a little bit different, that are like, oh, that's really clever. We never called it clever. We just thought it made more sense. We weren't, trying to do anything that was like game changing and stuff. But then people came back and they were like, oh, that was brilliant on so many levels. So again, I think that they're, definitely the good of coming out of COVID was, I think that everybody started to pay more attention to health. And I think, that's true for consumers too, that, that it definitely is the one benefit, if there is any, from what we've all experienced over the last year, was I think people are paying much more attention to their health and staying healthy, getting healthy. And frankly, that's worldwide.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kara. Your message and your stories are truly so interesting and inspiring.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Well, you guys, please feel free to follow me on I'm on lots of social media, but I especially for business stuff on LinkedIn and Instagram and I'm at Kara Goldin with an I, and hopefully you guys will get a chance to read my book or listen to my book on Audible too. It was a lot of fun doing it, and lots of lessons in there, whether you want to get into the beverage industry or just kind of, figure out what you really want to do and what's important to you, and don't let roadblocks, get in your way of really going out and trying to, pave your own way and figure out, what's going to make you happy along the way. So thank you
for
so
that
much.
advice. So before everyone leaves, we have a giveaway. We will randomly pick 2 attendees to win either Kara's book, Undaunted, or the book Girls Who Run the World, 31 CEOs Who Mean Business by Diana Kapp. Ariel is holding them up in her screen right now. And the giveaway will also feature some Hint water swag.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. Let me do that now. And I will spin for our winner. Okay. All right, Tarika, are you on the Zoom? If you are, can you just unmute and say here? Okay, well, if you're not on it, I will spin for another winner. Yay, Ashley, are you on the Zoom? Ashley?
I don't think she's unmuted, but she's on the Zoom. I see her name and she goes to my school.
Okay, so congrats, Ashley. You're the first winner. And I will spin for the next winner who will win Undaunted. Congrats, Elizabeth. Are you on the Zoom? Okay, I'll spin again. Stacy, are you on the Zoom? Okay, guess I'll spin again. Congrats, Amelia. Are you on the Zoom? If you are, just speak up. Okay. Margaret, are you on the Zoom?
Hi, Brielle. Yes, I'm here.
Hi, all right, congrats. You won Undaunted. Okay, if Ashley and Margaret could just stay till the end of the meeting to get your address so we can send the books to you. But congrats.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you so much,
It was
Kara. Can everyone join me?
It was lots of fun. All right, hope to meet you guys at some point.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Kara.
you.
We really appreciate your time. And thanks everyone
Bye-bye.
for coming to another Zoom chat.
Great night, everybody. Bye.